Can I have your attention, please? We'll be starting up shortly. Good evening and welcome to the Lowell Planning Board for June 3rd, 2013. Tonight we have 3 public hearings scheduled. The first one is 658 Andover Street for a special permit. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Corbett Development, Inc., seeking a special permit to reduce frontage requirements as part of the proposed development. The lot totals approximately 70,102 square feet. The lot is proposed to be divided into 4 separate lots, with 2 lots consisting of approximately 12,000 square feet of land, with approximately 83 feet of frontage, and 2 lots containing approximately 23 square feet of land, with approximate 40 feet of frontage. The current structure will be located onto one of the 12,000 square foot lots. The subject property is located in the suburban, single-family zoning district and requires special permit review with the planning board under section 5.1.1, number 7, and 5.9 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. We did receive a letter from the applicant on Friday requesting permission to withdraw, and we did receive a follow-up one this afternoon. This is by Attorney Brian Occasion, and it is directed to the planning board. It says, kindly allow this correspondence to serve as a follow-up of our conversation on Friday, May 31st, 2013. It is the applicant's intention to withdraw its application for special permit for the property located at 685 Andover Street. I am unable to attend this meeting tonight as I am at the Greater Lowell Bar Association's annual meeting in dinner, and I serve as one of the board of directors of said association. If the planning board is unwilling to permit the application to withdraw its application without appearing this evening, I would request that tonight's public hearing be continued to the planning board's next scheduled meeting. Thank you for your care and courtesy in this matter. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me, the undersigned attorney, Brian Occasion, the attorney for the applicant. So what we have is the matter's on. He's not here. The request to withdraw the matter was the request of the board.
Chairman, I don't have an issue with extending this or continuing it for 2 weeks.
What did we?
He stated that he wanted it, and
Well, he said he'd come in if we're not happy to let him withdraw it.
okay.
Or we could just let him withdraw it tonight, and then we wouldn't have to come back. And then the plans would be over, and if he wanted to come back, he'd resubmit a new set of plans. So, I'd have no problem with him letting him withdraw. Any of the board members have any comments?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman.
I don't have an issue with letting them withdraw as long as we receive plans at least a week prior to the hearing, so that we can go over them thoroughly and answer all the questions that
Mr. Gentleman?
we have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I think we have these processes and procedures in place for a reason. I think that reason is that the parties involved with issues like this don't get jerked around, you know, that being the applicant, the neighbors in the community, and the board. And, you know, in this particular situation, you know, we've seen the applicant a couple of times before the board. They were here for a preliminary hearing, in which case they brought in their plans and asked for some feedback. We gave them, I think that was actually before Mr. Boyle and Mr. Malovich were on the board when they first came in the preliminary hearing. And the feedback was, you know, we try to avoid these Oklahoma-style lots and make sure you meet with the neighbors. And, you know, went quiet for weeks and weeks. Next thing you know, the exact same plans are back before us. And there was a neighborhood meeting at Long Meadow, you know, just prior to that last meeting we were at. And, you know, at that meeting, the applicant put up a plan for a 5-lot, scary 5-lot looking development with the misshapen lots and a cul-de-sac, and basically said to the neighborhood, you know, we think we have the right to do this without any approvals, so, you know, we're asking you to support our 4-lot development, or else we're just going to go forward with this 5-lot development, in essence, threatening the neighborhood. And then, you know, they came before us 4 weeks ago. All the neighbors came down to speak on the public hearing. They asked for a continuance, which we don't have to grant, but, you know, the applicant told us that they would be coming back with a plan that was going to address some of the issues that were brought up at the neighborhood meeting. So we gave them, they asked for 2 weeks, we actually gave them 4 weeks. And here we are, 4 weeks later, we haven't heard a peep. And we get this letter. I mean, there was a letter that I have here that was circulated to the neighbors via the neighborhood group yesterday, where it says, you know, kindly allow this correspondence to serve as notice that the applicant is withdrawing the application. And we will not be at the public hearing scheduled for Monday, June 3rd. Well, you don't just withdraw. I mean, there's a process in place. You can't just say, I'm going to withdraw. Once the plan is put in motion, you have to come and request a withdrawal. And in my opinion, I think you have to have a good reason for the withdrawal. I mean, I'm not inclined to grant a withdrawal on this plan. I think that, you know, enough time has been taken, people have been dragged around enough. I think we should move on it. But that, you know, I'm open to what the rest of the board thinks.
I mean, I'd let them withdraw. I mean, you know, I know since the tenure I've been here, we've never denied an applicant to withdraw in the 29 years that I've been sitting on the board. You know, they came in, the public hearing, we didn't like the plans they submitted. I told them we need new plans. These are not satisfactory. Attorney Occasion understood that. Aaron Clausen spoke with him and said, your plans are not satisfactory. We told him they're not satisfactory. He didn't submit the new plans. If he came in tonight without new plans, then I think we'd have everything right in the world to deny him for insufficient plans. The fact that we're requesting withdrawal, if we don't let him withdraw, and then we continue it out for 2 more weeks, then I'm sure the neighbor's gonna come down again and say, now what we're gonna do with the next time. And really, what's the difference between the withdrawal and submitting again? It's a special permit, so they need neighborhood character. So if they come back in with a new set of plans, and they have the neighborhood that shows up that's totally in against it for the neighborhood character, I think the board's gonna take into consideration, well, as we do for all public hearings, everybody's concern. And I know that we haven't heard from Attorney Occasion since the last meeting, but shortly after the last meeting, the developer did reach out and spoke with Planning and Development and said they got the message and they're considering maybe coming back with something with 3 lots. So hopefully the fact that they got the message that, you know, this wasn't what the neighborhood wanted, maybe that they feel like, you know, for different reasons they want to withdraw it, so I think let them withdraw it. If we don't let them withdraw it, we bring it back, we bring the neighbors back another week, then we deny it. The only hardship there is then he cannot submit that same 4-lot plan again. If he submits any other new one, it would be, we'd have to consider whether it's a new plan or not, and then bring it back. And since it's not, if it was a site plan where they have it by right with conditions compared to a special permit where we can deny him, and since it's a neighborhood character, obviously I think anything less than 4 lots, let them work with the people and come back up, let's see it again. But I think if we postpone it and let them come back again, then if I was in a butter, I'd be back down here next meeting to see what we're gonna do. I mean, this way, let them withdraw it, that's my opinion, and then when it comes forward, they don't meet the criteria, then we take it on its face like we do every plan. So, I mean, I'm sure the people who are here tonight who are against it would like to see it withdrawn, but I mean, if we deny it, then it's only denied to those 4 lots. So if he comes back with 3 lots, that'd be considered a substantial change, and then if we allow it, then he comes back to start from square one. So, I mean, the fact that we didn't get the updated plans was, you know, showing that nothing was moving on it. So, I mean, I don't have a problem letting them withdraw. I think over the years, between the neighbors and the businesses, we try to be a friendly board to cooperate with everybody. In this case, if they want to withdraw it, I don't see any hardship in letting them withdraw it. That's my personal opinion. So, I don't know if anybody else has feelings on it. Joe?
Mr. General, I want to give what you have to say, your ideas here, proper consideration, but I'm not sure I really understand what's at stake here. Why? What would it benefit the city, or what would it benefit this board to deny their request to withdraw?
You're asking me now?
I'm wondering what's, yes.
I just think the neighborhood has been, and I can respect what what the chairman has to say there. There's, if we don't allow withdrawal without prejudice, and we don't have to grant a continuance either, you know, to bring the neighborhoods back in 2 weeks. We could open the public hearing right now and vote on it. That would not allow them to bring that plan forward again for another 2 years, right? As the chairman points out, if they were to bring a different plan forward, then we'd have to decide whether or not that was, a substantial change. And if it were a substantial change and we voted as such, then they could go forward. But it would just, it would eliminate the ability for them to come forward with this 4-lot plan with the Oklahoma lots, if we indeed determined that that didn't meet the character of the neighborhood. So that's what would be gained, I think, if we determined that we didn't want to allow a withdrawal. And let me just say, I think the chairman raises a good point. And I think that's what you're alluding to, Mr. Boyle, that maybe there's not that much to be gained. Because if indeed they're coming back with a 3-house plan or 3-lot plan, I think that's a substantial change. It would just cause yet another meeting for us to determine that it's a substantial change. So maybe your point is a good one. I think that the point that Mr. Lockhart brought up is something that we ought to stress, that if we're going to allow this withdrawal, we need to have detailed plans at least a week in advance of the next meeting. We need, and by detailed plans, we want to know what the lots look like, where the driveway is going to go, where the house is going to go, what do the houses look like? Because, by purview of the special permit, we have the ability to discuss and condition those things. So I think that, Mr. Chairman, if you're suggesting we allow withdrawal, if we could put that condition on there, that we have
Yeah,
that in a subsequent application, we need to have detailed applications, including location of the lots, location of the driveways, location of the houses, and detail of what the houses are going to look like, then, I'd be supportive of that.
I mean, because, I know last time, as I indicated to them, the plans weren't sufficient because we didn't even have the driveways. I mean, so, and obviously, planning development made that concern to them, and then I made a concern to them at the next meeting. So obviously, if we get plans similar to that, they're not up to date, I would call the applicant myself and tell them, these don't meet the criteria, so you take a very good chance of coming through and submit a set of plans. Oh, I have no problem doing that, so.
And I'm all in favor of being a friendly board. I'm a friendly guy.
Yeah, I mean,
But at the same time, I expect some kind of,
yeah, it's a two-way street,
it's a two-way street, right? We have
Anything
to
is
work together
communication.
on this. If we ask for certain things from an applicant, I expect to get them.
Yeah.
And not just be,
Communication.
And I think
cater
that-
to their whims.
Yeah, and if they don't submit them, then it gives us a lot more leverage, is the way I look at it. You can ask them, but we're not gonna draw them from, You ask, you don't receive, then you bear the brunt.
So I'll make the motion that we grant the withdrawal of the application with the condition that in a subsequent application for this site, we receive at least 1 week in advance of the meeting, detailed plans, including lot locations, driveway locations, house locations, and details of what the appearance of the houses will be.
Okay, did we have a discussion? All in favor of the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Second, all in favor? I'll be abstaining. Mr. Fischett abstain. So all in favor of the motion to allow the applicant to withdraw the special permit on 658 Andover Street, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Any opposition? Hearing none, so we have 5 in favor. Thank you.
So, can we just follow up for a second?
Yep. So they withdrew.
They withdrew.
Yep.
Now, do we have a date for them to return?
Nope.
Didn't he
Nope.
request
Nope. They have to,
the next scheduled planning?
nope, they don't have to come back at all. If they want to come in with a new set of plans, they have to submit it
All
to
right,
us and
so
go through
they
the
have
ordinary
to,
course of
it's
business.
totally
Yep.
up to them,
Yep.
okay.
So if they come back again, then you have to submit the set of plans. Yep. Okay?
All right, I misunderstood.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
We do have 2 other public hearings. We have one for zoning amendment and for the site plan for Perkins Street. I'll wait till they filter out. If there's no objection, I might go right to Perkins Street. If there's no one here for the zoning amendment, so, you know. Okay, we do have two other public hearings. One is a zoning amendment and one for the site plan review on Perkins Street. Is anybody here for the zoning amendment plan? Okay. And
Good.
the site plan review? Okay. Okay, I'll go to, so we only have one person on the zoning amendment, so we'll start with that one. Hopefully we'll get that one done a little faster, then we'll go to the site plan review. So we have a zoning amendment, minimum lots width. In accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 5, the Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinance, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Appendix A thereof entitled zoning. The amendment would modify Section 4.5.5, non-conforming, single and two-family residential structure, and Section 5.1.10, lot width, by applying minimum lot width requirements to the entire lot in a residential district. We did receive a copy of the zoning request that was sent to us. I believe this came by way of the council through the city solicitor's office. And what it's looking to redo is by replacing 5.110, the lot width. Each lot shall have a width of not less than 80% of the required frontage at all points of the lot. In all other zoning districts, and this zoning districts here are SSF, SMF, SMU, TSF, TTF, TMF, and USF, and UMF. So mostly they're residential lots. Well, this is not 80% of the required frontage at all points between the sideline of the right-of-way, along with frontage of the lot is measured in the nearest point on the front wall of the structure upon such lot. Such width shall be measured along lines which are parallel to such sideline. This provision may be varied upon a grant of a special permit by the planning board. The other matter would be non-conforming single and two-family residential structures by inserting subsection G, alteration to a structure which complies with all current setback, yard, building coverage, building height, and lot area requirements, but is located on a lot which does not conform to the lot with requirements of the above section, where the altercation will also comply with all said current requirements. So I think what that reads is, if you're in compliance and they change the law, then it'll be non-conforming and it'll be allowed. So does anybody here to present on behalf? Joe, I think this came out of the council, right? So there's no one here by the council to present this?
Right, that's correct. This is the draft ordinance as it is currently, and as you mentioned, mostly in basically all the residential districts and the SMU district, the 80% requirement, which is in the zoning code now, it only extends to the front lot line to the beginning of the dwelling, the front wall of the dwelling. In those residential districts in the SMU, that would extend to the entire lot. In all the other commercial districts, it would remain the same as it is. And then the second portion of the 4.5.5, that's for where you have a structure on a lot that currently does not conform with that requirement at 80% on all points of the lot. But if somebody wanted to make a deck on their house or some kind of addition that would comply with our setback requirements and usable open space and those kind of requirements, then that would be allowed without having to go through a special permit process. But any new construction that had that did not come and meet the 80% will require a special permit in front of this board.
Thank you. Anybody here tonight want to speak in regards to this ordinance change? The zoning change? Anybody want to be heard? No? Okay. Anybody in favor? In favor? Favor? Anybody against? 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 Okay, and the board members have any questions or concerns or comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to Joe, just to go over the 5.1.10, I just want to understand that a little bit more, because when I look at the existing ordinance, it does not spell out the districts, and so I'm just, from the perspective of the residential districts that this applies to, just so I understand it, the way it's currently written is you have up until the structure, the side of the structure where it can decrease. What are we accomplishing here as far as?
So that, right now, currently,
Just
you're correct. It's from the front lot line to the structure wall.
Right.
So right to the front. So in that distance, you have to maintain 80%. Once you hit the front wall, it can taper down currently or have some kind of jog in it. With this amendment is that that 80% of the frontage has to be maintained across the entire lot, not just to the front of the structure.
No, that's, I can tell you there was a small group of people that wanted to have something this restrictive with the original restructure of the zoning going back about 8 years ago now. And the appetite wasn't there at that time for this. So I think, some of the issues we were grappling with lot lines, I think this is apparently the climate, and the council appears the climate is right to bring something like this forward. So from that perspective, I think as we look at possible, and I hate to use the term infill, but the development that's left, and we grapple with the idea of having slivers here and there, and end up looking like a hodgepodge, especially when fences go up in the backyard. So I think this helps to eliminate that, and I think it's something that, again, the appetite wasn't there some 9 years ago, but I think obviously the environment appears to be right at this time. So I support it as presented.
Thank you, Mr.
as
Fischett.
well.
Rich, any questions?
No, I don't have any. I support this as written. If I could.
Bob, you have any
It makes
questions on this? Okay.
Sure.
Steve?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this is, as Mr. Fischett raised, is targeted at those pie-shaped lots, so
Yeah.
to eliminate that from happening in, the smaller projects where people have, a lot of land, and they want to try to jam as many houses in as they can. And it just results in a poorly planned development. So I think this is a good amendment. The other thing I'll point out is that it can be overruled by special permit of the planning board. So if there's a good reason to have lots that taper a little bit, then they can come for a special permit and can be reviewed here. So that we're really not prohibiting it completely.
Thank you, Steve. Joe?
I have some concerns about this zoning amendment, and they would be easier to express if I could draw. But imagine a lot shaped like this piece of paper. This is the frontage, and the house sits on the lot, and it has the sufficient frontage along the road, and the lot is big enough that it meets all of its front yard setbacks and side yard setbacks and rear yard setbacks and everything. This lot would be legal. Now, you take a small triangle that goes like this. Okay? We've just made the lot bigger. There is less crowding. There is greater setback in every way, but I've just made the lot violate the zoning because we added a triangle on the back here, and at this point, you don't have 80% of the width. I am worried that an attempt to get around that problem would encourage creativity in the design of lots in a way that we do not want. We've seen that developers and their engineers can be very creative in dealing with the shape of their lots to get around problems. And I can see how this proposal would solve some problems, but may create other problems. If there was some way, for instance, you have to maintain the 80% width through the entirety of the front yard setback and rear yard setback, but then it could become narrower beyond the edge of the rear yard setback, that would address the problem. But I don't see any gain for any public interest that would be achieved by making my theoretical lot illegal.
Well, I don't know if it'd be technically illegal where we could grant it by special permit. I think what they're doing is, by this, I think it's just giving the planning board more control of what they can do with these lots. And it puts the burden on the applicant to a higher standard by the special permit rule.
Yes, it also gives the applicant an interest in doing something with their lot lines to get around that special permit. In my theoretical, one way to get around that problem would be to carve out this triangle, take it off the lot, and put it under some fuzzy homeowners group ownership, or just leave it in the ownership of the corporation that's created to do the project, and then just walk away from it, and it becomes a no man's land tax title lot. That's one way to get around this problem. I don't see an advantage. I don't see an advantage there. We talked about making something by special permit, and that does give the board greater control when people apply for that special permit. It also creates this impetus to get around the special permit. I like what this proposal is doing, and I like the standard of 80% in order to avoid making it illegal to put a back deck. Okay? But I think that requiring that 80% all the way to the back, instead of to the end of the rear yard setback, could create unintended problems. And this is something that could be fixed in a way that still allows a proposal like this to be written and address all of the concerns that this addresses.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I hear what Mr. Boyle's saying. I think, you know, it's a good point that, you know, some of those, a lot like that would be acceptable, but, you know, wouldn't meet our zoning code. However, I think that this amendment would we'd gain more than we'd lose with this amendment. And I also want to point out that, you know, this came from the City Council and the Law Department. I don't think we have the ability to change it. I think we're only a recommending body anyway, so I think that they're asking us for a recommendation, yay or nay. So I think that, well, that's a reasonable point. I think that, you know, we gain more than we lose with this amendment, and I don't think we can modify. Joe, am I right that we can't make modifications to this? Correct?
You could recommend modifications in your recommendations to the council if you felt as though, you know, you could make a recommendation of approval with some conditions on it.
Yeah. I just fear that we'd, you know, that's a kind of a corner case, so to speak, that we're talking about there. So I feel we could get into analysis paralysis. I know that the council wanted to move on this pretty quickly. So, you know, I think we should go ahead and recommend it. And then maybe as a follow-up, you know, we can consider a further amendment down the line so that we can address perhaps the issue that Mr. Boyle's bringing up, although we can get around it with a special permit.
When you say a further amendment down the line, we can consider a further amendment down the line. Administratively, what would that mean? Would that mean?
I don't know. We have made in the past zoning change recommendations to the council. So, you know, we just made one recently regarding the TMU district on Rogers Street. You know, asked them to look at something. So, you know, I think I don't want to overanalyze this. I think it's a good proposal, and, you know, I'd support it as is.
Joe, just a question, and this is also the guidance that DPD would use when a proposal for an A&R lot is presented. And to sign off, if in the instance that Mr. Boyle described, if it left just an odd piece hanging out there, would, in that process of signing off on the A&R lot, couldn't that be?
If they list it as a parcel and basically label it not a building lot, then we would still have to sign off.
Still sign off as long as this meets the A&R, okay.
Right.
All right. So then interesting. So the advantage in that case like that would say, we just parcel it out we have an A&R lot, you sign off on it, and then we've got that lot sitting out there. Interesting.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I'll make the motion. I'm
No, no,
sorry,
that's-
Jerry, you done?
Well, I'm just trying to, yeah, I just, yeah, I mean, if,
You can't leave it hanging out there. It can be marked.
State your name for the record, please, sir.
But to become part of lot 1, 2, or 3. You can't have it separate as a
Yeah, I
not buildable lot.
I didn't think you could.
It's landlocked. You can't sign a plan like that. That's illegal. It'd be landlocked and you can't do it. So it'd have to become part of another lot to have them sign an A&R.
yeah, I didn't think you could leave it hanging out there as a,
Not as a lot, but as a parcel marked not a building lot.
It's gotta be part of another lot. It's named parcel A to be added to lot 2 or something like that. If it sits out there, you can't do it.
Okay,
Get it.
but if it was to be added to lot 2 would be illegal.
Well,
well, but then, yeah, no, and then that's when, again, I think Mr. Gendron pointed out, and that's where and the chairman pointed out as well, is that's where then it would be subject to special permit from the planning board. But I think something has to be done with that portion of that subdivision, you know, that A&R subdivision that's presented. So, yeah, it's an interesting point, but I think, again, I believe that this addresses the issue, and although, yeah, I don't think that is going to be the unintended consequences of what's being presented here, but it is an interesting point. Again, I would support what's being presented.
Richard, Bob, any follow-up?
Miss-
You, Steve?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we recommend approval of this zoning amendment that's been recommended by the council.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made.
Mr. Chairman, for discussion?
Sure.
The solution that is presented here to my objection is that, well, this will be a special permit in front of the planning board. Do we think it is good policy for every subdivision, every A&R that creates a lot that gets narrow in the back to require a special permit for us to advertise and hold public hearings and go through the entire special permit process?
Well, I think most of them would be site plan review to begin with, so would be duplicate of the site plan and the special permit, which we hold concurrent. But if they're gonna go and build on a lot, we're gonna see the site plan.
And I don't think we're going to see a lot of them. You know, that may happen from time to time. I don't think it's going to be a regular thing that we see. We don't see that many site developments of multiple lots anyway. And, you know, this encourages rectangular lots, which I think is what we want. But you raise a good point. There may be situations where it needs to taper a little bit after it's, you know, deep in the lot. And in those cases, it's special permit and it's a slam dunk, you know? So I think, I'm afraid that by monkeying with it, we might create some other unintended consequences that we're not looking at. This is simple and straightforward. It's requested by the council. I think it makes sense. I think, as Mr. Frechette points out, you know, it sounds like that there was an attempt to do something like this before and there wasn't the appetite for it. So while the appetite is there, I say we feed it. I think we should just go forward as is.
So we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Genman for approval, second by Mr. Fischett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Any opposition?
Nay.
Okay, so we have 4 in favor and 1 against. Okay, moving along, next matter is a site plan review and special permit amendment to 39 and 65 Perkins Street. I think they said he could set up here if he wanted to.
yeah, Barry's here, he can go upstairs.
I think the gentleman from the cable said he could sit right there and just hit the button for the green light. You want to use one of those microphones, so you just have to hit the green, so, yeah, either one that's in front of you. Like, if you want to take, put a mic there, oh, but you have that, oh, you're working off that plan there, okay. Up, there you go, all right. Okay, while you're setting up, do you mind if I read the advertisement?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, we have a site plan review and special permit amendment, 39 and 65 Perkins Street. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by One Perkins LLC for an amendment to the prior site plan review and special permit approval for a project located at the above listed addresses. The proposal includes the redevelopment of structures of 39 Perkins Street, creation of 2 new structures to create 30 dwelling units, and 1 3,400 square foot retail space. Under the proposed amendment, the applicant is seeking to replace the 3,400 square feet of retail space on 39 Perkins Street with a 2-story building approximately 12,000 square feet in size and containing 12 market rate units, 6 2-bedroom and 6 1-bedroom units. Parking spaces will be located in private parking garage on Perkins Street. The parcel is located in the institutional zoning district. May we hear the case from the applicant, please?
For the record, Mr. Chairman, James Flood, 549 Rogers Street, Lowell, representing the petitioner, One Perkins LLC. With me tonight is our project architect, Barry Gannick, and also with us is Bob Delholm, who is the developer. I think you remember the last time we were here, young Ed Walsh was representing the developer, and I think you're all aware that he suddenly passed away, so. And I think everyone was here in June except Bob and Joe when this was approved in June of 2012. And we obtained a site plan approval under site plan review and Article 12 special permit on the premises at 39 Perkins Street. The site originally contained 4 1- and 2-story structures from the old Lawrence Mill complex. And our plan was to renovate those 4 structures and construct a new 12-unit residential building and 1 commercial building, as the notice stated. We have not had any success in finding a tenant for the commercial property. So that's why we're in here tonight requesting an amendment to allow another 12-unit residential building, which really mirrors the one that was previously approved. Everything else on the site stays the same, the drainage, all the other work. We've also appeared in front of presented this to the Lowell Historic Board, and they are in support of this. The only other change in the project that I mentioned in my narrative was on building 2A5, I think it is, which is the building in the back that intersects, at the intersection of Riverwalk Way and Lawrence Drive. We had to remove one of the units because we needed a mechanical room. So there's only 5 units in that building as opposed to 6. We have received the comments of the traffic engineer regarding the curb. A representative of the developer met with the city engineer's office today to go over it, and they submitted a new drawing, and then tonight we got another drawing from Aaron. I think we would rather go with Aaron's drawing than the other one, but we're willing to work with the DPD and with the city engineers in coming up with the location of that curb cut. As to parking, I submitted different parking schedules that I think we told you we would do when we were here. I think you all have them?
Yeah, we have them in the packet.
Yeah, we have it.
This schedule has to do with the parking in the Perkins Place development. This shows how many spaces are presently being occupied, and this shows how many are presently available. The second schedule is a little different up above because
That was emailed out.
the building at 65 Perkins Street is complete, and there are 3 residents in there. So those 3 people are parking in the garage. So this says 226 as opposed to 223. The people in the bottom are commercial tenants that are there during the day. They have to be out of there at night. So there are plenty of spaces available still in that garage, probably 150 at any period of time. So that's where we want to bring the additional parking required into that garage. Basically, what I have to say, Barry can go over the plan if you'd like.
Sure. We'll turn it over to you, please, sir, if you introduce yourself to the board, please. You can pick that up if it makes it easier for you, as long as the green light is right there on. Yeah, that green light.
Oh, it
There
is.
you go. There you
There
go.
I am. Barry Gannick, Gannick Architects, architect of record for the project at, on Perkins Street. In terms of the building in the lower right-hand corner is currently in construction, nearing completion sometime later this summer. The building 2A6 in the lower left-hand corner is the one we're proposing for the change. It is virtually a mirror of 2A2 on the lower right, except it is stepped because of the diagonal change in the property line, as you can see. And so on a flat elevation, it looks the same as the building currently in construction, just to the right in the top drawing. And in axiometric, you can see that it is the same building, just stepped back, making no other changes, all the same materials, the same size unit spaces, everything. And simply, that's really all there is. Any questions about that?
None at this time, thank you. Anybody here want to speak in regards to Perkins Street? Anybody here wants to be heard? Just come to the microphone, give us any concerns, or either in for or against, or just any comments in nature? Just give us your name and address, please, sir.
My name's Josh Hill. I live at 52 Lawrence Drive in the Renaissance on the River condos. And I'm a board member on the condo board there also. And I thought other board members would be here, but I know we discussed this when we all got the certified letters. I've only lived there for almost 3 years or so. I've learned to really enjoy the neighborhood. I like all the development that's been going on. I'm always in favor of, rehabbing the old buildings. They're beautiful structures. They've done a nice job. My personal opinion is I think the community surrounding it would benefit a lot more from shops. I know they say they haven't had success finding people to occupy them, but I just see, 38 Spinners games with 4,000 people coming out. I, buy season tickets there. I go to the UMass Lowell hockey games. There's 4,000 people that pour out of the Tsongas Center. If you do it right, if you market it correctly, there's a lot of foot traffic. I go to Beer Works after every one of those games, That place is packed. I know every time I want to go grocery shopping, I have to get in the car when I could just walk to something like that. So, I don't know. I know of the 5 board members on Renaissance on the River, we all would like to see shops there. If I had enough money, I'd like to rent them out because I think I could make good money with it. But just we've had parking issues and whatnot already. I know UMass Lowell's just started today. They put up the temporary fencing on the dirt lot next to us, so some of our residents have kind of parked there illegally overnight, just because we've been crunched. When I originally bought the condo, the way they sold me the condo was they said I had 2 visitor spots and I parked along those dilapidated buildings. So that was all good and we could invite people over, and then when they started doing the rehab project, they took the spots away, and that's when we realized they weren't owned by the condo. It was just like out of nicety that we were able to park there. So we're under a lot of parking stress in our area, and if you know anything about our chimney smokestack, we're having issues there, and we've lost 10 parking spots there also. So I don't know. I'm here because I got the certified letter, and I wish I could do something to put businesses in there because I think they could do real well. In my 3 years here, I've seen just that neighborhood, grow. Our units are all full for the most part. We have to approve all the leases if people, rent out our units, so we get those all the time. I know that doesn't help saying, having more apartments won't be a good thing. it's steady income for a developer, but I think businesses, when they find the right people and see the success there, will, I think it could be good for the whole community. There's a lot of units. Our condo's 152 units. The Hub Hosiery building is, quite a few people. There's a lot of people that have a lot of daily needs, and I just think, I know me alone, I could probably spend $100 a day there in some business. So times that by the number of people, and I don't know. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak?
Hi, my name is Sandra Brescia. I just moved to 35 Riverwalk Way in the Renaissance on the River. I'm in the other building than Mr. Hill. I also have to agree with him. I think that it would be much better as a market than it would as apartments. I know, as he had mentioned, that the developer does make money on the apartments, but you don't live there. And there are a lot of older people. I just purchased my condo in February, and one of the draws, I know Hillary over at the Perkins, one of my draws was that there was going to be a market there. And I like to walk, and as I get older, I enjoy walking, and the only market is really on Fletcher Street, and that's kind of far, and I've heard that sometimes can be a little dangerous at night, so I don't want to drive over there or ride my bike or walk over there. And then the other place is across the street, there's a tiny 7-Eleven, but that's on the other side of the river, and again, at night isn't great. So I love the park. I bought season tickets, and I think it's a great community, and everybody there is very friendly, and I think that it would be much nicer as a market. If you could find somebody, that'd be great. And I just want to let you know that I think the color that you chose on the other building is really awful. That brown is just, I think it's kind of depressing, but that's personal opinion, so just wanted to let you know that I think a market would be great. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah, we did.
Anyone else like to speak? Yeah, sure. Just say the mic, please, because they pick it up at home.
The other thing I just wanted to mention was, since I moved in, it was the bioplastics building or whatever that was for UMass Lowell, and now it's becoming the dorms, and they seem close to finishing those up. And in terms of having, places to shop and things like that, I think last I checked, they said 550 dorm rooms. If it's anything like the college I went to, you pack 2 or 3 kids in there, you have parties, each one of those people want to go spend money too. So that's another market. So.
Can I ask you a question while you're at the mic?
Sure.
You said both of you are at Renaissance on the River. Is that which building is that?
Yeah, Renaissance on the River comprises of the mural building, they call it, the 6-story tall building. Okay. And the river building is the 3-story building.
I see. So it's the mill buildings.
Yeah, the Lawrence Mills.
Do you have a space in the garage?
No, we don't. When we lost the visitor parking spots, we were given I guess like a neighborhood discount to park in the AOT garage. I believe it's like $85 a month or something like that. I don't know of too many people that are taking advantage of that.
So where do you park?
The spots that are in front of the river building, the shorter building, we have spots there, so they're deeded to your unit. So when I bought my unit, it came with 2 spots. That's a rarity. Most have only 1. So
okay.
We park along. When we lost the parking, we also went to the city and asked for spots along the curb there, kind of going up towards the Perkins Street. Mm-hmm. And we had to get special stickers here at City Hall, so we gained 14 spots that way also.
I see. So
but
you do have deeded parking. You have 2 deeded spaces.
Yeah, I have 2
on the ground.
Correct. Okay. Yep. And the spots along the curb are just something that came around probably about 5 months ago or so. By showing residency here at the condos, we were able to obtain a sticker that allowed us parking there.
I see.
Which may get a little tighter now with the students and whatnot coming in.
Mm-hmm.
There's very eager towing companies in the area that,
yeah, sure.
They're a phone call away, someone's in my spot, and they yank your car out within 10 seconds. So good moneymaker for the community too.
Thank you. Same for you. Do you have a deeded space? Sorry, Jim.
I only have one spot, and they took away the guest parking because of the smokestack incident. So when my parents come, I move my car to the street, or I find a spot down the road, and then they take my one deeded spot.
I see.
I know most of the people that I know that I've met there only have one spot. And as he had mentioned, it's rare to have two. So parking's been quite a problem for me personally. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Excuse me, and I have a question regarding the smokestack. Is that, and I forgive me for not knowing the details, is that a temporary situation as far as what's going on over there, though?
I'm sure this gentleman has more information on it. I know that the Hurricane Sandy had knocked some of the bricks off.
Right.
And they had injured some of the cars, so they took all of the parking away from around the smokestack, because they were afraid somebody was gonna get hurt. So they went up and looked at it, and I guess there was more damage than they had originally thought. So it's gonna cost us a lot of money to fix that, and it is a historical structure, so I guess by law, we're required to fix it.
And it's the association that would you mind, Josh, if you, I'm just a little interested in, obviously, getting that resolved, because that's taken away parking spaces from the area.
I don't know how much of it's public knowledge, so I'll probably lose my voluntary job on the board.
Okay, well,
by
I
saying
don't want to put you on the spot either. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, you sound like you're on the board. Hurricane Sandy knocked a few bricks out, was cause for concern. We had an evaluation from Boston Chimney come down, and they looked at with binoculars, assessed where the bricks came out, and gave us a quote on repairing that part. When they went up there, they found quite a bit more damage than they perceived would be. They asked for us to do a full evaluation. If we wanted to, they gave us a proposal for a full evaluation. They spent about 4 days doing, I think it's 220 feet or so, or 180. 180 feet, all 8 sides of it, thorough evaluation, and gave us a very extensive report with a lot of photographs. And it's going to be a lot of work. The estimate that they gave us was about $275,000 to repoint everything and put in a safe state.
And that's the responsibility of the condo association?
Yeah, we inherited this nightmare.
Okay.
Which, I guess in 2006, when they redid all of this, the bottom was repointed well, but there wasn't much done to the upper part, so.
Now, as a result of this, how many spots have you lost?
I think it's 10, maybe.
14,
Or-
but I could be
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, it's between 10 and 14.
Okay.
So some of those spots they were all deeded. There was a visitor spot here or there. We've had to move around like handicap spots that we kept open for visitors and things like that. So it's been a stress on an already tight community, because we're bound by city land just about everywhere, except for we have a proposal, and we're going to start work on removing the islands in our parking lot sometime this summer. I know we had to get a re-engineered drawing on that, just to pick up a few spots, and we're going to repaint the lines and make it a little more narrow, so we're in a tight spot.
Excuse me, in that we do lose some trees and some green space that's kind of precious down there in the middle of the parking lot, so it's gonna look more like a industrial parking lot. Right now, we have some nice trees there that I
Yeah.
saw the drawing does remove.
You may want to talk to DPD, because I believe that was part of the approval, so that has to
Yeah,
be, that's something you just can't do.
Well, no, they've went back and forth.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
the president and the vice president, they've been back and forth with people at City Hall, and
Yeah.
they have a lot of connections here. I don't.
Okay, no, thank you. No, I just want to try to get an understanding of what that situation is, because again, parking is so tight. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments want to be heard? Anybody else in the audience want to speak?
Well, I just want to say that we've made those lots in our garage available to people at the Renaissance, and if you look at the sheet, I think, well, there were 14, but I think there's only 10 now that are taking advantage of that, so I mean, there are, I think when we came in before, we said we would do that, and we did do that, so.
What do you mean, Jim? You made the spots available to them?
They could come in and rent overnight
So
spaces.
they can rent spaces?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like everybody else, I mean, even our tenants pay, it's part of
see.
that lease too, so,
I see.
yep.
Okay.
Any of the board members have any questions at this time?
I have a
Mr.
couple.
Lockhart? Mr. Lockhart's on a historic board. Maybe you can talk to us about that brown color this young lady doesn't like.
Well, the historic board has no problems with your proposed development. We really like it, and I know you've talked to Steve Stoll, and we have no issues with it,
Rich is a member of the
including
historic board.
the color. Kind of blends well with the rest of the,
Bob just told me one other thing. Besides not getting a tenant, the bank has refused to finance a commercial development there. So, yeah.
oh, okay.
Want to tell him? Told you?
Oh, all right, I just have a couple of questions.
We'll get back. Is your name, please, for the address? On the record?
Good evening, Bob Delholm with One Perkins. I appreciate your comments very much, and we agree that the neighborhood would certainly benefit by the addition of a retail component, and hopefully all the positive growth that's occurred there will, at some point in the near future, allow that to take place. For us, the difficulty came really in being able to get rates that would sustain new construction, and in addition, the banks really were against a retail component, quite frankly.
Right. Back to you, Rich. You have a couple more questions?
Yes, I had a couple of questions relative to a memo that was dated today from Aaron Clausen. He references an angled protrusion located west of the on-street parking spaces. Have you seen this?
Yes, we don't have a problem with that, Mr.
Can you
Lockhart.
just point that out? I'm not exactly, the
If you
print
have
that
the
I
old
have is
plan-
not,
I have the old plan in here someplace,
Yeah, I'm just,
right here.
Can't
You want
see
to show him this one?
no, well, all right, so you don't have an issue with their concern here?
No, we don't. As a matter of fact, there are two plans. I don't know whether you got the one from the engineers. Do you have that one, Joe? Well, it's shown on that one that Aaron's.
All right, that's fine, I don't need to
We don't have a problem with that.
have a problem. My other question is relative to handicap parking. And you don't show any handicap parking here. What is the requirement, and how do you, are you going to achieve compliance?
The handicap parking is going to be on the north side of the site, over in this side.
You have those 38 spaces there that
Yeah.
are being used.
Some of which will be handicapped depending on occupancy, is that,
Correct.
okay?
It can be modified, but, until such time that a request is made for that,
All right.
they'll just be
That's,
located on one side or the other when we get to
all
painting.
right. Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Bob, do you have any questions?
There's no visitor parking at all.
What?
Vincent?
There's no visitor parking at all?
Well, there are those they go with the units, and there's parking in the garage if someone wants to park in the
Okay.
garage, but no, there's no,
These are tied to
specific.
the units.
yes, those are entitled, those are attached to the units.
So the handicapped issue would only be addressed if someone needed one
If
of
someone
those-
needed it, we could make one of them handicap
Yeah.
accessible, right?
Mr. Chairman, Joe, has DPD looked at these, the parking analysis here, or the parking?
Yes, that was a follow-up summary we had sent along. It showed what the required parking is for the different Perkins projects over here. So, and the counts were the actual usage. So from what's required, before the proposed amendment, there was 294 spaces required for the development. And there's a total of 370 in the garage.
Yep.
Under the amendment, 315 spaces would be required. And again, there's 370 spaces in the garage. Right now, there's 97 spaces being leased for commercial uses. So that's where it shows the total requirement plus the commercial. So that's what you have there. Something that would need to happen prior to these 12 units, if they were approved before they began construction, because the required is, and commercial lease spaces are over the total number of spaces in the garage, either the number of lease spaces would have to be reduced, or the applicant would have to show that under shared parking requirements that they're meeting parking requirements for all the residential components that you see amongst the Perkins addresses, or they would have to look to modify their special permit for 21 through 39 Perkins, which was originally for a 30% reduction. They'd have to modify that. They can modify it up to 50%.
We modified it down 30% on the garage. Remember when we came in with the special permit?
Yeah.
It can go down to 50, but there's plenty of parking in that garage. If you go there anytime, there are plenty of open spaces. I mean, the people there during the day are gone at night, and there's plenty of overnight parking available.
I've been there a fair amount of occasions at different times, and it appears to be plenty of capacity
Plenty of parking.
there, so Now, just curious, I guess, just a question to Josh over here. Has the association found a way to inform the residents there that parking is available in the parking garage? I'm just curious if that's... Yes, they have. Okay.
We try to communicate everything by email, so that's been out a couple times. I don't think it's been much of a concern.
Okay.
Just because I think some of the people get home late at night. The UMass Lowell lot has been open, and
Sure.
But I think today will be a wake-up call for them because it was all closed off with that temporary fencing around it. So we'll see.
That
But
may
yeah,
change.
we've sent out communication a couple times that the spots were available. I think just, you know,
Okay.
I know myself when I bought the condo, I was under the assumption that I had 2 visitor spots, which weren't mine.
Right.
So for me to turn around and spend money to you know, rent spots in the garage that I wasn't budgeting for,
Understood.
I think it's
Oh, sure.
difficult.
Yep, no, good, thank you, thank you. And I agree, I was actually excited at the thought of having a market in there. And I understand the frustration, and I know from the financing perspective, retail isn't exactly something that the banks are very excited about these days.
He tells me, though, that the new UMass dorm, the first floor is all going to be retail.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
interesting.
Yep.
That was another concern for the lenders is, there's a lot of communication between our project and UML. They've been very good about that. And their intent is that the street level will be open to the public, and there will have multiple retail amenities, as well as the courtyard will be available to the neighborhood.
All right, I have no further questions at the moment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank you guys for coming down. It's always useful to have your input and your experience when we're thinking about these matters. Unfortunately, we can't tell them what to build. You know, we can't say go back and build a market. They have to We're here to judge the plan that's been brought before us. But I do agree that I see your point. It'd be great to have some retail down there if I were living there. And I think that these, everybody I've ever talked to that's in this development or near this development is usually pretty satisfied with their living conditions. I mean, there's issues, right? But there are everywhere you live. And I think they're good units. They're nicely kept. They're in a nice part of the city. So really want to support development there. I am concerned about the parking. I think my memory's a little fuzzy, Jim, but I remember we had a lot of discussion about the parking last time. And there seemed to be some level of double counting in the new garage that we were worried about. So it sounds like none of that is that's been considered, Joe, in your analysis.
Yeah, we went back through all those, because there were multiple applications, and I think that's what made it a bit confusing before. So we went back through all that and put this chart together to try to help clarify that, showing that the developments amongst Perkins Street require 294 at this point. And under the amendment, they would require 315 dedicated to the residential uses within Perkins Street.
Okay. And even with the shared situation, even with we have rules about shared parking spaces, right? Even with the sharing of the retail spaces, we're still within the necessary requirements?
We could be. I haven't gotten to that point and looking at the shared timeframes between the commercial and the residential. That would be something that we would have to see. Otherwise, right now, between the required and the commercial, there's 412 dedicated spaces, and there's only 370 in the garage. So that's why I was saying that either there has to be something shown where through the shared parking chart that parking requirements are being met, or the special permit that was previously only reduced by 30% would have to be reduced down further.
I think we went through that before, though. All we require is 315. That's what would be required for all this development. Some of these people only have one car, and I think we went through a lengthy discussion. We didn't want to leave this whole garage empty because people aren't using it. Right now, there's plenty of space there. We have enough for our development. We could terminate the commercial people if that was this board's wish, but I don't think it makes any sense because there's plenty of room in there.
As I recall also, the last time you were in here, we had a condition on there that you were going to monitor the capacity of the garage, right? And if you reached a certain level of capacity, then you were going to either terminate the commercial or find something else in the city garage. I think we even had a letter from the city saying that there would be spots available if you needed them.
You're absolutely right. We did with when Chuck Connie was there.
My memory's not as good as it used to be, but it's starting to come back.
And then there was talk about putting another story on if it was necessary. Now, maybe 10 years down the road, that might be necessary. But right now it isn't, because there's plenty of open spaces in there.
Okay.
That's correct, and it was 95%. Once it's 95%.
Once it hits 95%, then you have to take
Further steps,
take some other action. So how much do you, just on an aside, how much do you charge if folks at these condos wanted to get an additional space? How much would you charge for that?
We charge $65 a month.
$65 a month? Okay.
I think that's what the city charges too.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
I have
And is it possible to, temporarily access spaces in the garage? Like if I'm having a party at my condo and I got 10 friends staying the weekend or something, is it possible to get temporary spaces?
Not typically, but Hillary, our property manager, is in regular contact with the Renaissance. For us to have that type of traffic in there would be a challenge, but she is in constant contact with the property management at the Renaissance, and there's a very good line of communication between both properties. They're typically 30-day, month-to-month rentals that are at will.
Uh-huh. And it's month to month, so if I wanted to rent it for just a month, I can do that too. It doesn't have to be a long term.
I think
Is
there's 10 from the Renaissance in there now.
Right. Is that something you'd consider, like a even shorter term than a month, if somebody wanted to rent spaces for a couple of days or something like that?
Possibly. I think some of that is also driven by a new insurance policy that we put in place that required the public parking facility to have minimum term leases, and some of that has been driven by security as well. There's been some security issues within the lot, and so we're really trying to have a very good control about who's there. But I think we could certainly have a discussion with Renaissance and see if it made sense to do that or not. Absolutely.
Do you think it makes sense for the board to, discuss that option? That might alleviate, if you could lease spaces on a short-term basis and you needed some guest parking, would that be something that the board would be interested in?
I'm the most junior member of the board. I joined in January, so I'm
Time to start throwing your weight around.
qualified to speak probably on anything, and they'll probably get mad at me for speaking at this, but I don't know. I know myself, it would, I haven't had a visitor in over a year just because I have no place for them to park. My friends who come join me at the Spinners games, I go pick them up wherever they are, so it'd be a nice option, but I don't know.
All right, thanks.
I don't think they need to do that for us.
Okay. All right, so I think that it would be important to make sure we keep all the same conditions on the prior parking situation, carry those over to this as well. But, I think that we want to see the development continue there. Sounds like you have a lot of, parking is my biggest concern, right? Sounds like you have a lot of unused spaces, and it sounds like you're willing and even by condition required to expand your parking if you start hitting up against the limits. So I think that makes sense. And, I would add, it might make sense, or I wish that you would reach out to the Renaissance to see if there's something that could be done. Since there are so many extra spaces and they seem to be in a bind, especially right now, maybe there's something that could be worked out to alleviate some short-term issues that they have. Thanks.
Joe?
I feel that the parking issues have been very thoroughly discussed, and I thank the board for that, so that I can move on to a different issue, which is the residential versus commercial. What is your intention if you do not get this amendment? Will you build just the residential aspect and leave the area of the commercial undeveloped?
We can't get financing for it, so it wouldn't be built. Commercial won't be built, we can't get financing.
The commercial won't be built, so would you just build the rear, the residential area, and leave the front undeveloped?
Well, we could. I don't think it makes sense for what they've done down there. It's a beautiful development. It's the final stage of the Lawrence manufacturing development. Mm-hmm. Residential is an approved use down there, and I don't know why that should be an option.
So I'm thinking about the possibility of the residential, the buildings in the back getting done over the next few months, over the next couple of years, the front being, the commercial section not being built for now, while the developer retains the right to build that portion, and comes back in 5 years or 10 years and sees if the market looks any different.
That's not an option. It's either he's gonna, if you don't approve this, then nothing will get built there. I mean, I don't see why you should even consider that. It's a permitted use there. The fact that we hope to do it, we don't have the tenants, we don't have the bank behind it. He's got a bank that'll finance the residential construction. They've done a nice job there in some buildings that people wouldn't touch before, and if you've been down there, you've seen them. You've seen the nice job they've done. I think it's a credit to the city.
Okay. I think there's no question but that a mixed-use development, which includes a retail aspect, would be more desirable, more in keeping with the comprehensive master plan. Hearing about the retail aspect in the UMass dorm building does, in my mind, alleviate that concern to a meaningful degree. The neighborhood needs to have a retail element. If it is being done nearby instead of on this lot, that should address the, that interest and those goals from the master plan just as well as if it was being done on site. The way this is being laid out, the way the whole area is being laid out is it will create an urban, mixed-use, pedestrian-friendly district comparable to what is downtown. And so having access to retail on the next block is just as in keeping with that mixed-use vision as having it all done on one lot. So that does alleviate that concern to a significant degree in my mind. I also wanted to say that I'm not surprised at all that you had no problem with the historic board on this project. Your design is sensitive to the area. It's quality. It's a quality design. It's consistent. It not only shows respect for what is there, it clearly capitalizes on the character of the existing built environment as an asset that you're incorporating into it. It's very much the type of design that we wanted to see, and I just wanted to commend you for the quality of the work that was done there.
Have you seen the little building in the back? Did you see the little brick building in the back?
Yes.
That came out beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. That's building 2A5 on this plan. That's the existing building. Yes. Yes.
No, this is at 65 Perkins Street. You go up Lawrence Drive and you see it up right at the top of Lawrence Drive. There's a brick building. There's 6 units in there. Came out beautiful.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yes. This was done. This was done well all the way. Sometimes getting the new construction that you're adding to an existing area to fit in but not look like you tried too hard to copy and or creating fake looking history, sometimes that can be a challenge, but you didn't do that here. It's different, but it fits, it's consistent. I really do think this is a very well designed, these are very well designed buildings. They look just perfect. I'm the junior member of this board, and so I'm not always sure how consideration of these things should go. From a legal perspective, this is an amendment to an existing special permit. As we consider this proposal, are we supposed to be looking at this the way we would be looking at it if they came in with, this was the first plan for the site that they came with, and we're considering whether going from an undeveloped location to this, what they're proposing, represents, advances the city's goals and the goals of the comprehensive master plan? Or are we supposed to be considering whether changing from the already permitted project to this project advances the goals of the comprehensive master plan?
It'd be the latter of the two. Yep.
The latter of the two. Okay.
This project has a lot of history on it, and in fact, this goes back with a lot of work with the state got involved in this. There was phases involved in this. Our state senator got involved in this. It's been in the paper for a long time. The city manager got involved in this. A lot of work went into it. Actually, I know Mr. Walsh received a recognition for the Songus Award for the green building thing for this project. So this has been coming along for how long now, Mr. Flood, in the phases? How many years we been working on this?
Well, I think the Riverwalk started in the early 2003, maybe it was.
So,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's been going a long
a lot of
time.
this came in, I mean, like I say,
Same
our
time,
state
right.
senator got involved to help push this project through. And
Right.
so, I mean, so what it's come along to is this is basically towards the end of the whole.
This is the end of the project. They had to get an amendment to the original plan to complete this, so.
So I mean, now, so what we have to do, so now what they did is, instead of just coming in before us and ask us if it was a substantial change, they went in and put in for public hearing. and put it on notice, so therefore, we wouldn't have to make that determination. They're coming in and saying, we know it's changed, so therefore they advertise it as a public
So they
hearing,
went-
correct?
Yes.
Instead of coming in for the first part and trying to say, do you think it is or don't think it is? So they took that question right away from us and advertised it as a public hearing. The notices went out and everything else for us to consider if this change would be sufficient. Going along with, what they're doing is they're basically trying to keep everything there, but obviously the market, literally, not gonna work in there. So I mean, basically, so they want to see if they can change what we've already approved, and basically probably with the same conditions that we put in last time is what they're saying they have no problem with. I mean, obviously, I think they would have been happy to put the commercial in if it was warranted, and if they could get the money, and if it was need be.
Yeah.
So this would be just that last phase, Joe, that we'd have to look at this point in time, instead of the whole big project. Because we knew when it came in before, it came in phases, and we knew these would come down the road, but we had to prove them as they came forward.
But it seems to me that all of those earlier phases were approved,
Not dependent on this. They're approved individually.
they were
We
approved.
can't approve them dependent on a future project. They would come in and say, this is what we're trying to do, and this is what we want to do, so they come in stages trying to bump it out as they went along. This is what our total goal is, but we approved each thing as a section as it came in along the way.
What I'm trying to understand from the members who have been involved in this longer, have a longer institutional memory on this, to what extent was the proposal to include a commercial aspect? To what extent did approval of, this original special permit, as well as other permits for other phases of the project, depend upon the promise of there being a commercial element?
Well, we approved the last time with it being commercial, I mean, obviously, so,
The market's not gonna support
and so that was the final phase of it. And then when it came in before, like Steve has mentioned, Attorney Flood, we had a lot of consideration, talk about the parking garage and everything like that, and the numbers, and that went on a couple of times, a couple of meetings. Remember, Steve, we continued it, had them do the analysis. But I mean, so whether they're changing it, we just have to consider whether we think this here, whether it meets amendment to what they've approved before. So just basically the final stage.
I think what Joe wants to know, with any of the prior approvals
Conti-
depended upon a commercial portion, and they weren't.
No, they weren't,
No
no.
discussion whatsoever.
Okay.
So we took each one independently as went forward, knowing what the whole overall projection was gonna be, but we had to take it as it came.
That's right,
You know, I mean, we couldn't say, we're gonna allow this, knowing the commercial is gonna come in later.
that's right. It was
I mean,
just-
you had an overall concept plan of what you want to get approved, which, so we, as developers, had an idea which way you're going on the project. But it came in, like they said, they started in the far right, moved their way down, and moved along as they
This
progressed.
is the end,
Right.
the end, yeah.
So this is, I mean,
Last piece.
like I said, this had a lot of state work in it for a long period of time. I remember many articles in the paper praising our state senator for it.
We had to do a lot of dealing with DCAM to get it done,
Right.
and they had to amend the Lawrence Mill plan and the whole bit, so, yeah.
So it took a lot to get us where we are tonight. Right.
And Mr. Chairman, if I just might add, for Mr. Boyle's benefit too, is this final stage, when we approved it, it was really conceptually presented as far as commercial space. We had the exterior design, but had no idea really what was
Who's gonna go
going to
in?
end up there. They had indicated possibly a market.
Or a bank. We
Or bank.
also
Yeah,
indicated we were
exactly.
hoping,
So,
but
yeah.
we didn't know, yeah.
So there was a lot of, a lot of conceptual things that were
Right.
out there that may end up there. I didn't see it, for myself personally, I didn't see it as a key component, but it was something that was, matter of fact, it was an unusual looking type of structure.
It was,
Yeah,
different.
Truthfully, architecturally, I think this is more pleasing than what was presented originally. It was a unique building, to say the least, but I know from my perspective, it was not, it didn't hinge, that approval did not hinge on that commercial component.
Okay.
I would agree with that. I think that I personally like the idea of the commercial space there, but it certainly wasn't, any votes we took were not contingent on that. And furthermore, I don't think it's our place to be able to, to somebody comes in with a special permit or a site plan approval on a certain development, it's really not our, I don't think it's within our purview to say, oh, we're gonna reject this because we'd rather have you build a market, you know? I think, we have to take each plan and each amendment to a plan on its face, and does this work from a planning perspective? Might be better for the community, there if it was a market, but, you know, obviously there are elements that prohibit that. So I think in the alternative, this works. And as was pointed out, we're getting the markets, the commercial space in the UMass Lowell dorm.
Right.
And if the market, you know, drives it, something the commercial development will end up there eventually, because somebody's going to want to take advantage of that.
Just want to mention one more thing, which I forgot to mention before, and we had this discussion before. We are going to take, whether it be the walkway inside, we're going to dedicate a portion of this development in the memory of Ed Walsh, because he worked so hard on it. So that's going to happen at a later date, whether it be Ed Walsh Way or something like that. We're going to do that in the future.
I have
Go ahead, Rich.
that's good. I just have a question relative to, well, I guess going forward and measuring the parking capacity in that whole area, which we all realize is quite important. You have a report here, overnight parking schedule for the Perkin Ames garage. And you have January through May, and each month you've got an occupancy percent of 98, 90, all above 95%. Is that occupancy percent the same as, I'm referencing a memo dated May 14th from Joe
Yeah.
to the planning board? It says down here that in the event that the applicant's parking facility averages 95% of total capacity, is that the one of the same?
That's different. No, we're 98% full in the building, but not everybody has 2 parking spaces. So that has to do with 95% of the parking garage was occupied. We'd have to find other spaces. But our occupancy in the building is 98%? 98%, yeah. It's different.
All right, I just find it a little confusing.
Yep.
What is first space and second space and total space?
Those are the people who have 2 spaces. First space would be,
Oh, all right.
they had
okay,
1, and
all
then
right.
some have 2.
So total spaces, Perkins Place is total occupied.
Yep.
And then total spaces, Perkins Ames is total spaces available?
Yeah, so there's open
And the
spaces.
final column is what's available.
What's available, what's open, yeah.
All right, that's the important, I just want to make sure that
Yep.
I understand your numbers. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Jimmy, can I say one more thing?
I don't,
It strikes me that 95% limit might be a little high. I mean, there's 370 spaces in the garage. That means there'd only be, you know, what is that? 19 spaces remaining when the condition gets triggered.
Right.
Would you be open to us reducing that a little bit, maybe going to 90%? That way, 37 spaces remaining.
He's all right with that, but,
Yeah.
you know, that won't happen if well, we don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I think, I'd like to recommend that, because that way, you know, before we get into a critical situation, you can, that'll be addressed.
As you can see, he pays close attention to the parking.
Yes, and that's great.
generates it, and,
And you're way off
Tend to.
you're way off of the 10% mark anyway, so
yeah,
it should be fine.
yeah, go ahead.
I would like to mention, I'd say on average, we have between 120 and 150 surplus spaces. The 2 spaces per unit is, for us, we have adequate capacity. It's been a challenge for other projects, and honestly, I think it'll be difficult for future projects, but we have ample capacity.
And that was approved, though, if I'm correct, they only needed 1 space per unit, Lawrence Mills. And then they changed it.
Okay.
So that's why that problem.
maybe,
So, Mr. Chairman, if you're ready for a motion, I'll make the motion that
Just give
we,
me, I want to mention two things if I could.
sorry.
One, I'm happy to see that the Historic Board approved it. I just had one follow-up on the handicap. It says here, you put the handicap in if the unit's going to be handicap accessible. How do you decide that? On prospective buyer, or do you make one handicap accessible, or how do you work on that?
We have X number of units that are made handicap accessible, and so what would happen is if a unit were being leased by someone with disabilities, that parking space associated with their unit would be assigned to them and designated as not just their unit space, but the handicap space as well.
So do you have now a potential number of handicap spaces that you're almost putting aside then? A limited amount that you consider at this time, or as you go forward and develop?
Fortunately, because we have surplus parking capacity, we have flexibility, so what we wanted to do is make sure that any handicapped tenant, we would be able to give them the space that was most usable for their specific need.
You make it as close to them as possible, most likely.
Yes.
So obviously, you would keep handicap to meet the, I think it's a regulation you have to make anyways, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Right, okay. Okay, so the only thing, Historic Board handicap, I'm glad to see you giving young Mr. Wall some recognition. As you know, I've known him for a long time, and
Yeah.
if they do anything on that, I'd like to be notified. If you could let me know, I'd appreciate it.
We'll let you know, right.
And besides that, that's all I have to say. I mean, I know I mentioned about the state approval, the Historic Board, the handicap, and that's all I have to say. I'll turn it back to Steve.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we approve both the site plan and special permit amendment for this project with the conditions that we carry over all the conditions on the prior special permit to this one, with the change that we reduce the trigger on the parking requirements from 95% to 90%. And I'll also add that request the management of the site to reach out to the Riverside condos and see if there can be a short-term arrangement made so that see if there can be a short-term arrangement made for parking. And by that, I mean, you know, if they have a situation where they lose 10 spaces because the bricks are falling on the guest parking, or, you know, maybe with all the capacity you have, some type of arrangement can be made to deal with that.
Steve, can we just add that they work with DPD and the city engineer to resolve that curb line in front that they're working on?
Yes.
Yes.
And I
Being done.
one I'd like to add too.
Okay, do you accept that, Steve? Okay. And
Yes.
Rich, do you have a comment?
To work with the traffic engineer on the handicap parking as that
Yeah, just,
evolves, oftentimes they're bigger spaces and it may, you know,
If it
we wanna
comes
make
up, we
sure
will.
that's- We want to make sure that's
Yeah.
done according to code. So it's just to work with the.
yeah, so to make sure they meet the handicap responsibility, right?
Right.
Yes. I accept all that.
Okay. So, did you get all those, Joe? I think there was 4 of them altogether. Okay, motion made by Mr. Genman,
I'll second that.
second by Mr. Fischett. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Any abstention? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thank
Good
you
luck.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it. Hopefully you get a market down at Lowell.
Now, that'll happen.
You know, because, see, all the Lowell
Market right
development
across the
doesn't have to
street.
come before us, none of it. So we hear from you people what's going on out there. They're exempt from coming before us. So all the development they're doing, none of that comes before us. So we see the garages, everything else go up like everybody else when we drive by, or we see it in the paper. Thank you, Mr. Flood. So what do you think you might do, the way in the back there?
Huh?
You think you might do something?
Sort of conflicted exactly with what reuse there are. But what we're hoping, wait a few years and
on the agenda, we have nothing on the new business, old business, any, okay. Moving along on the agenda, nothing on the new or old business, any notices from abutting towns or any updates for any of the board members?
Have none.
Mr. Chairman, I think we had two sets of minutes.
I don't think they were in the packet tonight, Joe, were they?
Were they?
No, they weren't in the packet, but they'll be ready for the next
Next
meeting.
one,
All
okay.
right, so put those on next minute. So, if the board members have no further correspondence, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to have a discussion with the board on the subject of special permits to reduce the frontage of residential lots. We've had that in front of the board on a couple of different projects lately, and I wanted to get more of a sense about the intent and how we should consider those and what those are really for. We've had this now withdrawn proposal on Andover Street, which wanted to take advantage of one of those. And then there was the recently approved project, also in the Belvedere neighborhood, which for which we reduced the frontage. And then there was also, we also have the Bigelow Street proposal, in which I had brought up at the previous meeting the idea of using that in order to fix what I think is an awkward lot layout. When we had that discussion last time, a couple of other members raised the point, which is a very legitimate one, about respecting the intent of the zoning and having a preference for approving projects when they meet the requirements of the zoning. The 90-foot, the minimum frontage in that zoning district was put in there for a reason, and we should respect and have a preference for proposals that meet the zoning. And that certainly makes sense to me as someone who is involved in the production of this zoning. A lot of it represents the outcome of a process. A lot of it represents compromises, and these interests accepted this because they got that, or they had this security. And if we were acting in a way that didn't show sufficient deference, excuse me, that didn't show sufficient deference to what was in the zoning, that would be sort of going back on a deal in a certain way. But the point I'd like to make is that these lot reduction sections, section 5.1. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. They too represent the intent of the zoning. And there was a specific intent when these were drawn to allow the board to reduce lot frontages. And the intent was not simply to approve projects if they looked good enough with this reduced frontage. The intent there was really was for those cases where a developer comes in with a plan and he can meet all of the requirements of the table of dimensional uses. If he gets creative and he draws some awkward lot lines, every one of these jagged lightning bolt shaped lots meets the frontage and meets the setbacks and meets all of these things, and he has the right to do this, and he can build it that way. And he can get 7 subdivision lots off of this project by drawing his lines that way, and it's all perfectly legal. In that case, these sections were put into the zoning so that in a situation like that, we can allow the developer to do what he could do anyway, get 7 subdivision lots in this project, but do it more elegantly. to do it without creating these awkward lot lines. The layout of the cul-de-sac is going to be the same, but the lot lines are going to make sense instead of being these jagged-looking things done purely to meet the, to meet the intent of the zoning. It was decided at the time that doing that providing the board with some flexibility in order to do that would be more in keeping with the intent of the comprehensive master plan by allowing for more orderly development when projects are getting built. And so where I'm going with all of this is that this isn't simply there to give a break to developers when it seems like it would be reasonable, that it would be not too bad, but that some important public purpose would be accomplished by varying the, by departing from the numbers on the table of dimensional uses. One example of such a public purpose, the project we approved in Belvedere, where he got the 2 large subdivision lots. He could have gotten 2 large subdivision lots without getting that special permit if he'd put in a short cul-de-sac street. Doing so, however, it would have cost the developer a lot more money to build a street, which is not our consideration. However, it would have meant a large increase in impervious surface instead of a reduction, which he was able to achieve. It would have preserved more open space instead of developing it and paving more of it over. There are all of these legitimate public purposes that were served by allowing him to have slightly shorter frontage along the street instead of having to put in a road. But another important public purpose that we should be pursuing as we consider these proposals is the creation of lot lines that make more sense. That is really, particularly the special permit reductions on the table of dimensional uses were put there to achieve the public purpose of allowing subdivisions to have more rational lot lines. And so I wouldn't presume to tell anybody on the board what is a better or worse layout in this subdivision project. But what I'm saying is we should not shy away from using and pushing for the use of those sections when we feel that it would be more in the public interest to change the layout of the lot lines. The idea, the basic premise, we should be deferential to what is written in the zoning, and the legislative intent when the zoning was written is very well taken. But we should also keep in mind that the legislative intent behind this zoning also included putting in these sections, allowing for these reduced frontages to achieve certain purposes. And we should be similarly deferential to that legislative intent. When this zoning was created, those were put in there for the purpose of because it was determined that giving this board a little bit of flexibility to change those requirements would result in better projects. That too is the intent of the zoning. That too is the legislative intent. And I don't think that we should write that intent out of the zoning and out of our consideration.
Personally, the intent really doesn't matter how you change the zoning law. The court doesn't say, I want to know what each counselor who sat here thought at the time they passed that zoning law. It's what they passed and how we interpret it and how they interpret it. This all created with the frontage, all because of one small lot at the bottom of Livingston Street. The planning department did everything they were entitled to do by approving an A&R lot. People were outraged. They accused them for things they did not do. It made public paper and accused them, and everybody said it was not their fault. people said it was. As a result of that, the council acted quickly. We don't like to hear this. We want to change this, what we want. They went and changed it, period. So we don't say why you changed it. They didn't like it, so this all comes forward. The other one was on the one on Westford Street, on a little side street, which was done by one of the councils, bought through, saw it, didn't like it, we want it changed. So usually it's some development that comes through, it hits the papers, there's an uproar at the council, they go and they want to change it. That's basically what came before us tonight. This is the way we want it to be. So their intent, when we've been to court in the past, judge says, I don't care what the intent is, are they following the standards under the rules and regulations that are passed by our site plan and special permit approval? Doesn't say, well, I think he meant this, I think he meant, they said, doesn't matter, we don't go back to that, it's what they finally approved. So a lot of these are created because some development has been scrutinized, brought to the attention. I mean, on the one on Livingston Street, the question was a matter of inches, whether they should turn down the foundation and block. That house had been there for many, many years. I know exactly where it is. I grew up very close to there, and it was interpreted in the papers. They blew the whole thing up and made the council react, and that's how they reacted. So a lot of them, when we act on them, doesn't, to us, what the intent is, doesn't really matter. It's just whether they meet that criteria or not. I mean, so if you get into what the legislative intent is, you could argue they meant this, they meant that, doesn't really matter. The court's gonna interpret, this is your zoning, and when we make a decision, we have to defend it. We have to say, this is our criteria, this is what was passed by our council. I mean, a lot of the stuff in our zoning, I personally don't like at all. I've echoed it several times, but if it comes before me, I'd say we have to prove it. Perfect example. They can have a shared driveway in Belvedere. I mean, why should houses that are coming in, they're 20,000 square feet, get the right to share a driveway? I mean, do I think that's reasonable? No, I don't. I think they should all have their own driveway. If they have over 10,000 square feet of land, why don't they have their own driveway? They should. They shouldn't inconvenience a person. City Council North Wisdom, let them have shared driveways. I mean, so we have to interpret what they give us. But most of these things, and that's exactly how Livingston Street started, and as a result of that, we approved the one, the next street over on Harvard Street. When the people come in, they were saying, well, we don't think they should have the same frontage. 98% of those people had either half or 3/4 less the frontage than the people who were asking for it. So I think, a lot of it is the council acts because they see something that's brought to their attention. Usually the paper blows out of proportion, or they comment on it, and one way or another, and whether it's the statute or not. But I mean, DPD took a lot of criticism for stuff they had no control of. I mean, they signed off on what they're entitled to do. People didn't want to hear that. As a result, the council changed it. So I mean, it's, our job is to make sure when they come in with a plan, is they either meet this criteria or not. I mean, we don't tell them how to draw the plan. If their plans don't meet that criteria, we, at the board, we either have to act that meets the criteria or it doesn't. But I think, a lot of these have changed because one of them, one on Westford Street, was really bad. It was just a little side street, and then a whole bunch of them put in there. I think Councilor Caulfield at the time really brought it up. Remember, we went and changed all that zoning after that, and then the other one, that's where we got the frontage reduction, was on the Livingston Street project. It was right at the bottom, and that was an old house, and a lot of those houses on the bottom of Livingston Street and Harvard Street at time, a lot of those were fraternity houses for it was Lowell State at the time, because they were so big in nature. But I think, so a lot of them, it's, what the intent is, we can't get in with the intent is. I think we just have to get into whether they meet the criteria as under the zoning. I mean, because if we say, I think this is what so-and-so voted, then we're gonna get flipped on appeal, there's no doubt in my mind, because our case law is very clear in that, reading all the cases.
Well, then even setting aside the issue of intent, looking strictly at criteria in the zoning, there are criteria laid out in the zoning for when these sections should be invoked and when a special permit should be issued for one. And it goes to the frontage reduction on the table of dimension requirements refers to section 5.1.17, as well as there's a section in section, there's language in section 11 about, which has to do largely with achieving the goals of the comprehensive master plan, protecting the character of the neighborhood, all of these important, legitimate, substantive considerations. It lays out what the standards are. What I'm saying is we should not be shy about applying those standards to the idea of reducing these lot frontages and not be overly deferential to. We should not think it is inappropriate for the board to reduce lot frontages simply because it is a reduction in the lot frontage. It can serve important public purposes for us to reduce lot frontages in certain situations. When it's going to produce a better project,
Right, I mean,
we
I
should
think-
change the lot frontages.
Right, and that's why they give it the special permit. And I think, each person, as we sit here, make our own determinations on everything we've read in the zoning code. Each one of us can make certain assumptions on what we've read and studied and what we've done in the past, why we make certain decisions, without telling everybody why we've done so. I mean, a lot of time you grasp a lot of knowledge on these sites, and you're not gonna go out and explain what I've done for each one over the past, so the courts are very clear, land is unique. You have to look at each piece of land as it is. If we've granted something over here, and they said this thing up on Westview Road several times, when Attorney Flood was there, they're talking about, they wanted a certain thing that the length of a driveway, and you've given it out before in the city, therefore you should give it out now, give a special permit. And the judge says, no, they don't have to do that. Very clear. Land is unique. If they did it before, and at the time in the case law that was cited by the judge, he says, it does not matter if the board has given it out before, and even though when Attorney Flood couldn't cite the cases that we gave it out before, he goes, doesn't matter, they're unique. So when you look at a piece of land, each one has to be interpreted separately. So, each person I know here gives a lot of thought and determination on why they vote for something, and each one of us puts in all those sections of consideration, what we can do and can't do. I know Planning and Development spends a lot of time in giving us recommendations of what we can do under the site plan and special permit process authority. So I think, everybody looks at the whole wide perspective on each lot that comes in, and how they get changed, that's totally up to the council. We just interpret to the best of our ability individually, whether we think they meet the criteria and what's the best project for the city. And I think, over time, some people agree with things better than others, and sometimes we all agree, sometimes we don't agree, but I think all of us work the hardest we can to make sure whatever project comes in is a better project. So I know trying to meet the master plan, when you read a lot of the sections, some of them conflicting, tell them you have to look at this, you have to look at that. But I think when we get our comments from staff, they remind us most of that all the time, and I think they do a very good job. Because even when you read that section, as you say, go to this section, go back to this section, and they overlap. So I know, but the frontage reduction all came by way of certain lots that the council didn't want to happy, and they changed the zoning on it. So I know that's what really triggered the frontage reduction on some of these where, like the one up on Hartman Street, they had more than most of the people in the neighborhood, so it gave us the right to go and compare it. And when you compare it to the other houses, especially when you have a neighborhood where a lot of the zoning has been changed and they've been grandfathered in. So a lot of times, a lot of us look to say, what does this house have compared to? And then, therefore, you do have that neighborhood quality effect, where you can look in to see that neighborhood character. If this person just happens to have more land than the other people, when everybody else has shorter, we still look at the neighborhood character. But I think a lot of it, and I'll let anybody else weigh in, each piece you have to look at individually, but the rules are changed by the council, whether we like it or not. We have to enforce them to what we feel is appropriate. I know you want to say something, Jerry?
I'm not quite sure, Joe, what you're asking. I know on the reduced frontage, as the chairman had indicated, and we've got a couple instances based on the table of uses, which was passed as a result of the project on Livingston Street. It was to give the board more control over the design, if in fact the builder wants to come in and use the prior frontage that was amended. And I think in all the instances that it's come before us, we've actually approved it and applied the principles of the neighborhood character. There was actually a project, Lakeview Ave, it ran on Lakeview Ave and the street behind it as well. And that was the same thing, and we actually had them come back several times. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, yeah. And then on Fairmont Street was if, the lot size exceeded with 20,000 square feet, you could go with the reduced frontage. So, and we applied all the same principles. So I think they're being applied. Obviously what we voted on this evening wasn't so much the frontage, was the actual size of the lot as it recedes back, and it still maintains control with the board if in fact, it doesn't take away, as Steve brought up, the fact that there, you know, if you do have a situation where it would deviate from that, then you still have the option of coming before the board. And I think we've done a, you know, overall pretty good job of applying then the principles of the master plan as well as the zoning with neighborhood character. So I understand the point you're making, and I think in the instances we've had too, that's what we've been doing. I don't know if I guess I don't understand the question or the point.
My impetus in bringing this up is the discussion we had last time where I brought up the suggestion on the Roland Mainville project. And he had that one very awkward diagonal lot line, or I thought it was a very awkward diagonal lot line, and that it would make a lot more sense for the line to be drawn perpendicular to the street. And the impression I got from the board wasn't that there was disagreement there about the merits of that change. I walked out of that meeting with the sense that there was general agreement that it would be better designed to have that line drawn in a straight manner instead of creating this diagonal line through the front yard, but that for some reason the board didn't want to pursue that. Didn't want to pursue getting that pursue a special permit to make that happen, not for any reasons having to do with the merits, but for an idea about the inappropriateness of the board making a change and not deferring to the table. And I'm bringing this up to urge the board to really consider the unique dispositions of different pieces of land, as the chairman mentioned, and to not be shy about using the powers the zoning board gives us when it will achieve a better design. Certainly not to avoid doing that out of some misplaced intent to defer strongly to one section of the zoning, but not and ignore this other section.
So I think it's, on that particular project, I actually didn't find that line, that diagonal line, to be flagrant in any way. I thought it was a reasonable design. But I think the larger point is, I don't think it's our position to apply these special permits. I think if a developer comes in to request a special permit, we have to apply the criteria and in our own opinions determine whether or not the special permit qualifies. But I don't think it's if a developer comes before us with a plan that meets the zoning code and, you know, there's nothing flagrant about it that we, you know, would vote against it for, that I think, you know, we should approve it, and we can approve it with conditions if we so choose. But I don't think it's appropriate if somebody comes before us with a plan that is a good plan, to force them to go back and seek other approvals to adjust something that we weren't particularly fond of. I think we need to judge the plans as they come before us. And in that particular case, that was a development that has been before this board, I don't know how many times, and over I don't know how many years, and we finally got to a point where everybody was happy. It was like, oh my God, I can't believe we got here. Sometimes this process works. And the last thing, in my opinion, I wanted to do in that was throw a monkey wrench into the system and say, I think you should come back and apply for a special permit so that you can make this relatively minor adjustment to the plan. So that's how I felt about that particular project. And, you know, these special permits, I don't know that I actually like them. The ability to reduce frontage. I mean, I think the zoning ought to be the zoning. And I don't know that it really makes sense to have them in the code. But as the chairman points out, they are in the code. And, you know, we apply them, we approve them or deny them based on whether or not they meet the criteria that's set out in the zoning code. And we don't really have a lot of, you know, leeway beyond that.
Anybody else have anything further? I mean, because of what Steve was saying on that last plan, we've seen it 4 or 5 times, and some of the issues you're raising, we already discussed. So we weren't about to start hashing out all over again. because we had prior, we spent a lot of time on that. We met with the neighbors in here 4 or 5 times, across the hall 2 times. We've been through all of this with them, and we know what they wanted, and we know what he bought up there, and so a lot of the stuff, some of the stuff that you raised, we've already discussed with the developer and with all the neighbors. So, I mean, a lot of us, you know, we made our minds up on certain things without bringing them all up again, because we've already addressed those. And that's why that plan had been changed so many times. That was the 2nd or 3rd time it came for zone change. When he bought the property, he didn't need the zone change. And we've been through all that before, and he's had different representatives here, and I think he did a lot better with the new representative. But I mean, a lot of those questions, some of them that you raised, we've already addressed and had been answered for us, so we didn't have to raise them again.
Okay.
I mean, with some of the projects that we've seen for a while, I mean, like, you know, some of the ones who've been around for a long time, you've seen the project comes in, it's been an amendment. A lot of things that you're seeing for the first time, you don't know what consideration, and yeah, within the nights that we spent here addressing all those issues.
Okay.
You know what I
Okay.
mean? So, I mean,
Yes,
some of those we've been through. So we're like, you know, I'm not gonna sit here, I remember what you did, I'm not gonna rehash all the past meetings. We saw it, we like it, we say it's a better plan, and we go forward.
Okay, I see. All right. I came away with that. I came away from that then with a different understanding of
We've met
what
with
was
the
driving
neighbors
board.
several times, and the neighbors told us certain things they wanted.
Mhm.
And they came, and they finally addressed most of the issues the neighbor wanted. And before, we had a lot more neighbors than we had last time.
I
The
see.
neighbors have been here in droves, and certain ones have been here several times. I mean, I think last time there was only one gentleman who wasn't here, the guy with the neck brace. Yeah, besides that, they've come in, they've asked certain things. As a result of what the neighbors said, the city councilors took it upon themselves to change the zoning, not the applicant.
Right.
Because of the city councilor sitting down and addressing all those neighbors as well. So there's a lot of history behind that. I mean, it goes way, way back. And that's why when Steve said that night, you know, finally, this is a work in progress that's finally coming to the end stage after we've addressed everybody's concerns. And we even, when we were across the way in the mayor's reception room, we actually sat and said, what do you people want? What can we do to help you? And they said, change the zone, make it bigger. The development come in and said, I will stipulate, I will make these
Yeah,
bigger lots. And they said, we want you to make them so they're guaranteed. As a result, those people heard our concerns, they went to the council, and the councilors, they come in, what are you here for? They changed it. So what they told us they wanted is ultimately what we saw at the last project.
Right.
Remember, Steve, when they came in, they spoke to us over there, we were candid, we said, what can we do to help you guys? And they gave us a list of things. And we said, you know, this is what we'll do what we can to make that a better neighborhood. We talked about when that street was built, how we went to Chelmsford, how the developer bought it before the changing was, how they had the meetings at the hotel. We went on, I mean, every time this project comes up, I get certain calls from people in that neighborhood. They call me, I think they have me on speed dial. Because I couldn't tell you who they are, they call me all the time, and I usually stop out there, and I stop and I talk to them in the neighborhood. Because they know they'll see me there. Some of them even recognize my car up there now, I mean. Scary me.
Okay.
You know, but I mean,
Gotcha.
so a lot of it was, you know, because this was a long way coming, and that's why we finally knew that it was light at the end of the tunnel on that particular project. And a lot of those things have been compromised to get where we're headed to.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me now. I understand.
Anybody else have any further comments? If not, we can make a motion to adjourn by someone. Motion made and second, all in favor?
All right.
We're adjourned. Good night, and thank you, everyone.